We were at the brink of failure so many times, and we just refused to quit. I go from loving what I'm doing to being unemployed. And 2 weeks later, I was right back in another one. One day, I woke up and I was 25 years old, and I was exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was so thrilled when I was assigned to the 101st. You know, you serve at the needs of the Army. You have no idea where you're going to go. And when those orders came down, it was a dream come true.
Hi, and welcome to Veterans Corner. I'm George Hinestrosa, an Air Force and Army retired veteran of 25 years and a business owner for 9 years. Here on the show, we explore how military experience transforms into business success. Each episode features veterans who've built thriving businesses, sharing strategies that turn military training into entrepreneurial advantage. The mission is to inspire and equip transitioning service members with practical knowledge and real-world insights from veterans who've built their businesses in many different industries. And today's guest is Douglas Carroll. Welcome to Veterans Corner, Douglas.
George, thank you. I'm honored to be your guest today.
Thank you, sir, and it is also my honor to have you here. You know, there's a certain type of leader who doesn't just adapt to change. They create it. Someone who can take a technology from concept to the operating room, build teams from the ground up, and guide companies through the kind of growth that ends with acquisition offers they can't refuse. But here's what makes today's guest truly fascinating. Before he ever stepped into a boardroom, before he built his first sales team, before he helped pioneer some of the most innovative surgical technologies of our time, he was leading soldiers in the 101st Airborne Division. My guest today is the president and CEO of Unify Medical. Over the past 3.5 decades, he's been part of 6 different medical device companies that were acquired, including Novadaq, sale to Stryker, where he spent over 11 years scaling their global business. He co-founded Exa Health, served as chief commercial officer at Gauss Surgical, which is now part of Stryker's Surgical Technologies division. And he's worked at the cutting edge of medical imaging, AI-assisted surgery, and digital health innovation. But what really caught my attention wasn't the wins of his resume. It's the pattern. Time and time again, he's been the person companies call when they need to take breakthrough technology and turn it into something that actually changes patient outcomes. From the battlefield to the operating room. He spent his entire career in high-stakes environments where decisions matter and leadership is everything. Thanks again, Douglas, for being here today. And let's start a little bit before we get into some of the entrepreneurial aspects of the interview. Let's start by just going back as a young man, Douglas. Let's share a little bit about what was going through your mind. What motivated you? What influenced you? What was it that, like me, I watched too many war movies with my uncles when I was a kid, right? All the Clint Eastwood and Telly Savalas and even Rambo and Top Gun. So all those things, right? And I just happened to, all those things, the patriotism was just nice in those days. What inspired you, Douglas?
Well, George, like many of my peers, I was raised by the greatest generation. My father was a Navy veteran, combat vet from the Pacific, served aboard the USS San Jacinto, which famously President George Bush also did. And all of his friends, everyone that I knew growing up was a World War II vet. And so service to one's country seemed just a natural. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to serve my country because I felt it was expected of me. There was no pressure to do that at all, but it seemed as though it was something I couldn't imagine not doing. I had to do it, and I'm ever so thankful that I did.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, when you joined, how old were you when you joined, by the way? Just curious.
The bigger question is, when did I make that decision? And I can't even
Yeah,
I
when
I
did you make? Yeah, let's go
I
there.
can't even remember that one.
Right.
But when I was I knew that I was going to serve. When I was in the 5th grade, I decided that the pathway to service was going to be through the Citadel. That was the only place that I applied to when I was a high school senior. I had no plan B. I had set my sights on doing that and that alone, and was fortunate enough to attend the Citadel as an Army scholar. So I was on my way. I had the pathway set in front of me, and it was a tremendous experience. Here again, I can't imagine my life not having been through that, and been through that with the people that I attended the Citadel with. The brotherhood there is legendary. It extends to this day. Some of my very closest friends were my classmates there. It's just a wonderful experience.
So we all, as military and even in the movies, we hear Citadel, Citadel, right? And tell just for the audience exactly in your words, in 30 seconds, what is the Citadel and what does it represent? As
Well, the Citadel is the Military College of South Carolina. It was founded in 1842. It has a storied history of contributing um, tremendous leadership to our nation. Some people call it the West Point of the South. I would argue West Point is the Citadel of the North, but that's another argument. Um, but it is a tremendous place. When I attended, it was still all male, so a very very um, type A driven institution. It has since opened and is co-ed, but the standard has not really faltered at all. The caliber of cadets that the Citadel produces and subsequently turns out to military service is unparalleled in my estimation. They continue to serve our nation admirably, just incredibly well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And later on in the show, we will bring up a little award that Douglas and his wife have prepared for some top graduates from the Citadel. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So, Douglas, just tell us a little bit. So you're at the Citadel, you're graduating. How was it going into the military? How was your feeling as a young man with all that knowledge now? You're still a young man, and still your hormones are raging and your dreams and everything is just pumping. Um, what exactly, when you went into the army, what did you think? How did you think that experience was going to be, and how did it actually turn out?
So, um, you get exposed to all the different branches within the Army as you're going through your training. And as I was coming through, I really believed that I was going to branch aviation. I had always loved flying, loved everything about it. To this day, an airplane can't fly over that I don't look up at.
Right.
I've been a private pilot for 25, almost 30 years now. So that was the path that I was on until the training rotation took me to the infantry branch. And when I experienced that, it was as though someone flicked a switch. And I realized that A, it was going to be the most challenging. Uh, B, I could learn to fly as a civilian, but I would never, ever get the experiences that the infantry branch would give me as a civilian. And that changed my focus. It changed my pathway. And just like a lot of my peers there that branched infantry, We did so because we wanted that challenge. We wanted it to be hard. The Army delivers on that. It was hard.
If I recall correctly, they're nicknamed the Screaming Eagles, aren't they?
That's the 101st. Yes, that's
Mm.
absolutely true. And I was I was so thrilled when I was assigned to the 101st.
Mhm.
You serve at the needs of the Army. You have no idea where you're going to go. And when those orders came down, I just it was a dream come true. And that unit was just a phenomenal experience. Here again, friends to this day. The men that I served with in my battalion, 2nd of the 327th Infantry, are some of my closest friends today. We, as a matter of fact, just a month or two ago, I was together with half a dozen of them and our battalion commander, just to get together for dinner because we're so connected. 3 years ago, my wife and I threw a a reunion for the entire battalion from our era, and 30 years after we were last together, we had nearly 100 people come from all across the country to reconvene and quite honestly celebrate our battalion commander, who was our guest of honor there. So
Wow.
again, these things are so significant in my life, and I reflect on them constantly.
Mm.
And I look back on the experiences and the lessons learned, and realize that they are what created everything that came after. As I say, I can't imagine not having done it. I don't know where I would be had
Mm.
I not had the experience.
Wow, wonderful. So, could you just real briefly, what ranks were you while you were in the service, and then immediately go into um, what do you remember as being maybe one or two of your greatest challenges, militarily speaking, while you were in the army?
So I commissioned out of the Citadel as a second lieutenant. By the time I got to Fort Campbell, I had been through all the initial training, um, and eventually was promoted to first lieutenant. Um, and this is the pivot point. One day I woke up and I was 25 years old, and I was exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I knew it. I realized that I had achieved the dream that had fueled me for all those years, and it brought me to this pivot point of, well, what's next? What do I do next? I know I can do this for another 25 years. I guarantee it. I could do it and I would love it. But is there something else out there? Is there another challenge out there? And that's what ultimately led to my deciding to leave the service. While in the service, the challenges were nonstop. I think the greatest challenge for me, mentally, physically, was just like everyone else that goes through Ranger School.
Right.
It is meant to take you to the very limits of your ability, and show you what you're truly capable of, and show you things about yourself that you would never avail yourself to if not driven there. And I think back on that almost every day. In some way, I realize how significant that was to me. And not surprisingly, to this day, I'm in touch with.
And for the audience, I don't mean to cut you off on that
Yeah.
one. You can continue, but just for the audience, that means 3 hours of sleep a night, one meal a day.
Oh, you're being generous with 3 hours, George. There was one segment, where we didn't get more than a little cat nap, over 5 days.
Wow.
Again, things that you would never, ever do to yourself, but you're shown what you're truly capable of,
Mhm.
and you begin to learn how to function in truly high stress environments, and not just function but lead, and that is the life lesson. The life lesson of not only being able to lead when you yourself are physically exhausted, starving, pushed to your limits mentally, but so are your peers and the people that you have to lead. They're in the exact same situation,
Right.
and that is a real challenge to overcome. But it shapes you, it changes you, and again, I think that my success after the military is forged by experiences like
Experience.
that.
Right.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Not to mention survival school and all that stuff. So yeah, that's another part of it. So at what a point then, at what so now you are what rank when you're when you're deciding to transition from the service, what rank were you? And what brought about why that time? Why did you decide to start to transition? What was it that motivated you? What was the mental gymnastics? Now you've done all these things, and now Douglas is thinking, okay, there's some inner voice telling you what's next, what to do next. Maybe you didn't know clearly, but what was that? What was that inner voice telling you?
It's funny you mentioned the what's next, because that has always been what drives me. I'm always thinking, what's the next step? What is the next thing beyond what I'm doing today? And I reached that point in my service. I was a first lieutenant promotable, soon to go to the captain's board, which I felt was a pivotal point, and sort of a go no go decision for me.
Right.
Again, I was 25 years old, and I was exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up, and it made me question, well, what's next? I can do this. I know I can do this, and I will enjoy this, and I could make a career out of this that would be tremendously rewarding. But what else is out there? And that led me to decide to separate from the service and go into the civil sector. And with the exception of dropping my terminal leave paperwork 2 months before Iraq invaded Kuwait, I wouldn't change a thing. I would do it all exactly the same way. I would have served my initial term, and then separated and gone on to do what I've done post-military.
Right. Right. Excellent. When you were transitioning, did you have something in mind? What field did you go into immediately after the service, and why that field? Was there something you had in the back of your mind, or were you just, let's test the waters?
No, great question. Great question. So, at that time, so this is late 1990, summer of 1990. At that time, the pharmaceutical industry was enamored with junior military officers. They were hiring them left, right, and center because the industry was growing so rapidly, and they wanted people that brought in the raw skill set that junior military officers do. Obviously proven track records, proven grit, resolve, drive, all the things that they want in leadership in their organizations, but without the bad habits of having come up within their organizations. And so I was recruited into a pharmaceutical company. One of the reasons that was attractive to me, that it made sense to me, is that I grew up in a medical family. My father was a physician. My mother was a nurse. All of my father's friends were physicians. It was just an environment that I was comfortable in. And so it made sense to me that, okay, this is a path. And I accepted a role there, and it got me into the corporate sector. Now, what I very quickly figured out is that what I really enjoyed more than anything was working with small, lean, driven teams. I did not enjoy corporate America. That
Right.
that was not what I enjoyed doing. I wanted to be at the tip of the spear. I wanted
Right.
the real challenge. And fortunately, just a couple of years into that experience, I was recruited to join a startup, to join my first medical startup. Um, that startup ultimately failed, as many of them do. The device just wasn't ready for prime time. We ended up having to pull it off the market, and I go from loving what I'm doing to being unemployed. And 2 weeks later, I was right back in another one, and I have never, ever looked back since. I found my calling. I found the environment that I wanted to work in for the rest of my career, and that's where I've been ever since. And the parallels between leading a scout platoon in the 101st Airborne Division and leading a MedTech startup are they're almost perfectly aligned. The skill sets, you don't think about these things
Right.
when you're a, a 24-year-old flat-bellied infantry lieutenant. You don't
Right.
think about what you're really learning and experiencing and all of that. But it changes you, and it teaches you things that are translational. And that's the thing I tell people that are getting out of the service, moving into the private sector. It's not it's not a pivot. It's just an application of your skill set in a different environment.
Right.
That's really what it is. What you bring to the table, you don't think will translate. The reality is it absolutely does.
Translates. Yeah.
It absolutely does. And so, that's here again, why I'm so beholden to my foundational military experience, because I know that it created the pathway that has led to my experience post-military.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. So now you are there, and how long did you stay there? And we'll just quickly, so we can cover a little bit of other things. So, and I saw your LinkedIn profile, so I know we could be all day just talking about your LinkedIn profile and how much stuff you've done. But, how did you um, hop to where you are now? Like, what is the uh, how do you feel that you're transitioning and moving from one to the next level of what you're doing now? How did that evolve? What was the inner motivation, and what was really going on in your mind, right? We're talking about the mental, psychological aspect here, not so much uh, what you were doing, but just I want to understand a little bit more about what Douglas is all about, right? And how we can translate that into to help our other officers and enlisted who are transitioning so that they feel what you're thinking, what you're living.
Yeah, so the way that a med tech startup works, ultimately, you are driving toward an acquisition. That is your ultimate goal. You're taking emerging technology, you're bringing it to market, you're introducing it to the market, you're validating it in the market, you're proving your ability to scale it in the market. But the whole idea is you're ultimately de-risking it for subsequent acquisition. Now, as I mentioned, that's not always a smooth sail. And my first experience was that we failed, that the technology just wasn't ready, and it wasn't going anywhere. And we ended up, as I always say, in a big smoking hole in the ground. But it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up, and what you bring out of that hole when you come crawling out. And as I say, that initial experience just put the hook in me, and I knew that I had found my home and I was going to go do it again.
Right.
Um, eh, I went to the next one. We were successful. We were acquired. Now, when you get acquired, typically you have two choices. You either go with the acquisition, join the large company, or you do like I did, and you go find the next one. Again, it's what's next? What's
Right.
the next thing?
Next, right.
So you go find the next opportunity. And I've done that time and time and time again. Most of these run 24 to 36 months. You're going to know your fate very, very quickly. Now, I did have one, Novadaq, that I was there 11 years. I was there from the very initial commercialization all the way through the exit and into some post-acquisition consultancy. And that was, without question, the most challenging of all the ones that I've done. We were at the brink of failure so many times, and we just refused to quit. We just figured out a way to live and fight another day, and we ultimately were tremendously successful. But it took a level of grit and determination that a lot of people don't possess. But as a team, we all came together and we just decided we were not going to let each other down. And I think that's a big thing that you learn in the military. You know, it's not about you, it's about everyone around you.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to win every battle, right? But the war, in essence, at the end of that period of time when the battles are going on, you may have injuries and go through these slumps, but eventually, the end result is we won the war, right? So,
Yeah, I always think about, you're trained to focus your mission, your men, and then yourself. And that is really just servant leadership, which is a watchword in the civilian sector. It's exactly the same thing. If you focus on your mission first and foremost, and then you focus on the people around you, the people that you're doing it with, and you put yourself last, you're going to be successful because everyone around you is going to be successful because everyone is doing the exact same thing, focusing on what is the real task at hand. If you can get an organization to believe in that and work that way, you're going to be successful. And that's why, again, I gravitate towards the small teams
right.
because small teams function that way. You don't.
So that leads me to this question, Douglas. And again, so we're obviously you're driven by challenge, you're driven by the possibilities, you're driven by what's next, you're driven by all these things, right? And you as the leader, and obviously you were trained to be a leader, not just through your schooling and the military, but obviously your experience in the corporate world also led you down this path. And again, going back into the psychological aspect, how do you carry that weight without it crushing you? And what's more importantly, how do you build teams that can carry it with you?
So, um, how do you carry the weight? That's that's experience, that's grit, that is having done it before. It's the knowledge that you've done it. Again, I go back to the
Right.
Ranger School experience, knowing what you're truly capable of, being pushed way past the limits that you would put on yourself changes you, but it also makes you realize that you've got that. You've got that in your rucksack, as I say. And that that gives you the resolve when things get really, really hard, because you just know that you're capable of far more than you believe you are, and you drive that way. How do you get teams to do that? Well, you lead from the front. I'm a horrible manager. I'm not a manager. I believe in leadership. I believe you're out front and you're not asking your people to do anything they haven't seen you do.
Right.
And that's again how you build strong teams. But it's all about the team. It really is. And again, here it just takes you right back to the military experience.
Yep.
That's how it works. And so this is what I'm saying when I say that it's not a pivot. It's just an application of your skill set in a different environment.
Right.
But the foundation is there.
Right. And the skill set doesn't necessarily have to be, how do you take apart a weapon or how do you put it back together? The skill set is focusing your mind on what is there in front of you and being able to pursue it and not deviate, while keeping everything in balance, right? Without letting things fall apart, right? And even though things may seem like they're going to fall apart a little bit, it's that ability to maintain that focus under adversity, kind of like horse blinders, right? But with intelligence, right? With intelligence and with fortitude.
Yeah, the one of the principles I always fall back on is the concept of mission command, of commander's intent. You're trained that way, that you at the end of the day, everything is about whatever you're doing. Does it drive the commander's intent? Well, in the civilian sector, that's really just strategic vision. That's your strategic plan. Does is everything that you're doing furthering your strategic plan? Does it move the needle strategically? If the answer is yes, you do it. If the answer is no, you don't do it. You have limited resources. You can only do so much. So you focus and you do those things that move the needle strategically. Or, as in the military,
Right.
drive the commander's intent.
Right. The command.
Same thing.
Correct. So Doug, now, so as we're reaching the mark here, let's talk a little bit about the Douglas and Kristin Carroll, um, Gray to Gold Ring Award, that you guys have initiated since December 31 of 2024. Can you talk a little bit about how you're giving back to the graduates of the Citadel?
So giving back is the key phrase there. I think as you likely hear just in our conversation, I am so grateful for the experiences that I have had and the foundation that I have. And that foundation started in the home and then went to my experience at the Citadel, and then on into the military. But that experience at the Citadel just it changed me, and it really put me on my path. And I realized that had I not attended the Citadel, had I not chosen to commission and go into the military, none of what happened afterwards would ever have happened. And so I wanted to come up with a way to recognize that, to pay homage to that. The Citadel ring is a famous token of
Right.
your experience there at the Citadel, and I thought that was a fitting symbol to endow. So my wife and I endowed a fund that will purchase a Citadel ring for one male and one female cadet that are on track to commission into the Army their senior year. And we did that just because, again, we wanted to give back to that institution, but moreover, we wanted to reward people that are taking that same track and
Right.
and serving their country. And we thought that this would be a small way that we could
Right.
recognize
If you
that.
don't mind, I'll just read a little bit of the award here. It says, in July of 2024, Mr. and Mrs. Douglas R. Carroll announced to the Citadel Foundation the intention to establish the endowed Douglas and Kristin Carroll U.S. Army Gray to Gold Ring Award Fund. The primary purpose of the Douglas and Kristin Carroll U.S. Army Gray to Gold Ring Award Fund is to provide financial resources annually to purchase a Citadel ring for at least 2 members of each graduating class. Eligible recipients shall intend to commission into the United States Army. Based on merit, at least one male and at least one female recipient is to be chosen by the Army Professor of Military Science within the Military Sciences Department, in coordination with the Director of the Citadel Alumni Association. That is in essence the award fund.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So our first awardees will receive their rings this coming fall, and we're really excited to meet them.
Wow.
Um, and this will be something that will happen in
Right.
perpetuity.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you for that, and thank you for your contribution back to our future servicemen and women.
they deserve it. They
Yes,
deserve
they
it.
do. Yes, they do. So finally, as we wind down here, Douglas, thank you for all the insight, and I'd like to just maybe go into the family thing, into the family circle here. And how does Douglas focus himself daily? All right, we understand there's mission focus and all this and parameters, but now from the inner circle of the family, how do you manage family, work, the stressors of life, spirituality, God, the Bible, anything? And everyone has a different type of worship style, I guess. But what is it that works for Douglas? How do your day? How do you start your day? How do you feel that? What centers you for the day, energy wise?
Well, first and foremost, every day is a gift, and none of us are going to get out of this alive. And you have to respect the fact that there sadly people had, whose lives are cut short. And you have to recognize and respect the gift that you've been given.
Mm.
Um, I also think that you have to move ahead. You have to be constantly improving yourself. Otherwise, you stagnate. Um, but that one of the things that I've really learned is you have to give back. You have to help people around you. Life is a team sport, as I say.
Yeah.
And again, the more you focus on the people around you, the more successful you ultimately are. It's just by default, but it's because you're making the people around you successful.
Right.
And so if you can do things to help people, well, you should be doing those things. It's as simple as that. My wife is an accounting professor at a local university. Uh, we we really do respect and appreciate one another daily. We recognize the gift that our bond is, and uh, and again the gift that waking up every day is, and that is how we live our lives. I've tried to slow down myself. I'm not good at it.
It ain't happening.
No, not good at it. I don't do well, doing nothing. I can't do that.
Right.
And she's exactly the same way. So as we ultimately age and transition into whatever is the next thing,
Right.
it's going to be with the same drive and determination that
So instead of retired, it's rehired.
yeah, yeah, or repurposed maybe,
Purpose. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Douglas. So, just in closing here, I just if you had a few minutes to spend, let's say, in front of a group of Citadel graduates or in front of any transitioning group of military servicemen and women, or anyone for that matter, in regard to personal, in regard to life in general, if you had a couple of minutes to speak to a crowd, with maybe some tidbits that only Douglas can say, because only your experience can elaborate on what you know, what would that be? What would you say to a group of young men and women, starting off or transitioning? Let's say transitioning, right? Transitioning, because this is what the show is about, health
Yeah.
transitioning.
Um, one of the most amazing life lessons, is how circular life is. Do you think that you're, as a young infantry lieutenant, you're serving with people that you think, well, eventually I'm going to move on and I'll never see these people again in my life.
Right.
That is not true.
Right.
What truly happens is the further you get away from that experience, the greater your appreciation of that experience. And you realize that the people that you were serving with have changed you and you've changed them, and they're having the exact same feelings you are. You're going to see these people again, and you're going to cherish the friendship that you have with them, the bond that you have with them. One of the things that I recognized, and I didn't appreciate it at the time when I was at the Citadel, was, you're in a very, as I say, very, very much a type A environment, and everyone is very driven, very focused. And then you leave that setting and you go to an infantry battalion in the 101st Airborne Division. Everyone is focused, everyone is driven, and you think that everyone is just like you in the world, and they're not. You think that everyone is just like you because you're surrounded by people that are just like you. But that's just a microcosm of what's really out there. And you don't really understand it until you get out of it and you get into another world and you realize again how you've changed, how you've been prepared for what lay ahead. But you also will fall back on it, and you'll fall back on those people, and you'll see those people again in your life. Again, I friends to this day, people I could pick up the phone right now and say, I need you. I need help. Help me.
Right.
They'll be there. They'll be there instantly, just as I would for them.
Right.
It's you don't really appreciate what you're creating while you're creating it, but it's there, and it will follow you for the rest of your life.
Yes, that I totally agree. And when you're young like that, it's hard to see the forest for the trees, right?
For sure.
But the truth is that what is it that it says biblically? It says it's better to give than to receive. And you mentioned this. It's in serving others that where you find your true passion, and people
Right.
don't understand that it's the parable, I guess, of the seeds, right? You drop a seed, but you don't get back a seed. The plant that comes out of that seed produces hundreds of seeds. So you don't know the seed that you sow at what point that seed is going to give you back, you know and life is in that way. Life seems to be a mystery, but really it's a law. It's a law that exists. I think I believe created by God. It's not only a mental law, it's a physical law, it's an agricultural law, it's an anything law. The more you give, the more you're going to get back, right?
That's exactly right. Absolutely true.
Right.
Absolutely true.
Right. So thank you, Douglas, very much again for being with us today. Do you have any last comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, George, I do, and it is to recognize you for what you're doing for the veteran community.
Thank-
I think that it is a challenge to step out of your comfort zone as a service member,
Right.
and I think you're doing a great job of highlighting people that have done it previously
Right.
and showing that again it is all just transferable. It really is, and it's invaluable experience. And there's a big world out there, and it is desperate for the kind of talent that our service creates. And
Absolutely.
so, whatever you do to drive awareness of that is a blessing, and it's greatly appreciated by me.
Thank you, Douglas. I appreciate that. And yes, just to caveat on that is, my whole life, really, all I've heard is, the homeless veteran. I've heard, the VA issue, all the crazy veterans at the VA. But I never hear of all the great things that veterans are doing, right? All the resources and businesses that veterans have built over the decades and decades. And we never talk about that, and on LinkedIn, I go on LinkedIn and I see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of veterans posting things, but the world doesn't know about that, right? And it's always, oh, the government has to help the veterans, and yeah, but the veterans are helping the community already,
Right.
right? There are unfortunate people, and there are people that hit certain slumps, but that's not everyone. And
It's not even a tiny fraction.
it's not even a tiny fraction, correct? Um, so my goal really and giving back is just to highlight that, right? So
Well, you're
thank you
doing a
again.
great job of it, George.
Thank you, Douglas. So let me just, in going off here. So this wraps up today's episode of Veterans Corner. A huge thank you to Douglas Carroll for sharing his journey. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Join the conversation by sharing your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay strong, and remember, you're never alone.